1, 2, 3, now!
Hi, my name's Noah, and this is the first of what I hope to be many episodes of Flipside. In these short segments, I'll be pulling one record from my collection and talking about why I own it. A few quick things to go over before we get started. I am not a professional reviewer, nor is this a review. The main takeaway for this video, and others like it, should be a shared common interest in music, and the classic polyvinyl fluoride format it is pressed into. For my first showcase, I wanted to pick an album that is not only near and dear to my heart, but is in fact the very reason why I started collecting vinyl records in the first place. And that album is The Consolers of the Lonely by the Raconteurs. For those of you who don't know, the Raconteurs were formed in 2005, consisting of Jack White, who was still enrolled with the White Stripes at the time, Brendan Benson, Detroit-born solo artist, and Jack Lawrence and Patrick Keeler, both members of the Greenhorns, a garage rock band from Ohio. The band is said to have been formed when Jack White got together with Brendan Benson in an attic on a hot Nashville afternoon to compose that song that your cousin's band does a sweet cover of every Tuesday during happy hour at the spot around the block. From there, the band recorded what they could throughout the year, eventually amounting up to their first full-length album in 2006, Broken Boy Soldier. Which was well received. In 2008, with almost no heads-up promotion, the band released their second album, Consolers of the Lonely.
We're counting down the last few seconds to call in right now at 8775 on the 5 and get the Raconteur Action Pack. Speaking of action, tell us a little bit about the Action Pack.
The album name originates from an inscription on the side of a Washington, D.C. post office, written by Charles William Eliot. Messenger of sympathy and love, servant of parted friends, consoler of the lonely, bond of scattered family, enlarger of the common life. Which, if you're big a fan of him as I am, you know that that is the most Jack White thing that Jack White has ever done. But at the same time, perfectly represents the nature of this album, which consists of some of the most somber rock and roll fueled ballads. The reason this album sparked my interest in vinyl records is because of the Third Man Records Vault 38 package it came in. Having only a few records before this and subscribing to the Third Man Vault on a whim, I lacked the full excitement that was in store for me when that package showed up on my doorstep back in 2018, 10 years after the album's original release. Upon opening the package, I was greeted with a fresh pressing of The Consolers of the Lonely, some sweet stickers, a patch, a set of photos of the band members, which I have since framed because they were too cool not to, and a 7-inch with 2 brand spankin' new songs from their long-awaited future album, Help Me Stranger, which we didn't even know the name of at the time. I cannot express how cool it felt knowing I was one of the first to hear some of the new music from the Raconteurs since 2008. I probably listened to that 7-inch multiple times a day for the short period until it was released digitally. And that, right there, is where it finally struck me. This ancient act of dropping a needle bewitched me and released a new layer to these good vibrations. The music was familiar, but the physical connection that came with it was new. From then on, every time I listened to that 7-inch, it felt like the Raconteurs themselves were handing it to me and saying, hey, check this out. For the Consolers of the Lonely album itself, the fun only continued from there. Pressed on copper foil vinyl, this piece of art should be sold for millions and hung next to that decomposing banana duct taped to a wall. After staring into its wavy metallic lines, I've come nothing short of discovering the meaning of life, and that is to buy more records. Accompanied by a recolored album cover, anytime I play this record, I have to stop whatever I'm doing and study the secret messages it holds inside. When folded completely out, the album cover's full image shows more hidden artifacts that can churn the listener's speculation. Each item and placement must represent something, but it is left up to the eye of the beholder to define. The beauty of this album makes it not only one of my favorites, but also one of my prized possessions. As for the music itself, and I'm not being totally biased at all, but this record kicks ass. From beginning to end, you're treated to some of the most blustering yet delicate melodies, accompanied by dramatic lyrics. This band really is my jam, so if you disagree, that's fine, but never come back to this channel again. Also, remember to like and subscribe before you go. If you're unfamiliar with the Raconteurs, the best way I'd describe them would be alternative rock. Some similar bands you might have listened to include obviously the White Stripes, the Black Keys, Queens of the Stone Age, Beck, etc. But, like all of those bands, they're hard to compare or put a description to because of their unique style. Looking closer at how the Raconteurs work, now listen closely to what I'm about to say before you jump straight to the comments section. Their dynamic reminds me of the Beatles. 4 band members, Jack and Brendan being the 2 frontmen, Paul and John, followed by the 2 cores of the group, JL and Patrick, George and Ringo. From what I understand of the group, Jack and Brendan generally lead the song composure, which results in some great collaboration between 2 very talented artists. Brendan bringing in his very warm-hearted likeness from his solo work, then clashing with Jack White's leather-upholstered garage rock. Other times blending together seamlessly, representing their common Detroit backgrounds. A good example of this is the self-titled first track on the album, Consolers of the Lonely, where Brendan Benson literally describes himself as a drained human being. Haven't seen the sun in weeks. My skin is getting pale. Haven't got a mind left to speak. And I'm skinny as a rail. Then abruptly bridging into Jack White's counter, both in tempo and dialogue. If you're looking for an accomplice, a confederate, somebody who's helpless, you're gonna find you'll find yourself alone. Trying to define the meaning of this song, most people have their own thoughts on what it means. I've read that people think it represents capitalism all the way to drug addiction, but no matter what another person tells you, it's never going to be as good as your own interpretation. As for the rest of the songs, 14 in total, I'm not going to break them down individually because I would like for you to experience them yourself. Instead, I would like to talk about stories, or anecdotes to be exact. A person who tells anecdotes in a skillful and amusing way. A raconteur. And that is precisely the best way to describe what you'll be hearing in this album. Each song has something new to teach you through past experiences or fictional tales. Then the last track on the album, Carolina Drama, has Jack White depicting nothing short of a stage play, lyrically described like a radio show you and your family might listen to back in the 1940s, backed by a mixture of folk and rock and roll. Some downfalls of the album, if I had to pick one, would be that the songs blend a little too well. Not that the songs aren't good, just that when you have one bumping rock song after the next, it might get a little underwhelming all 14 back to back. So maybe it could have used with a little bit more up and down rather than constant full throttle all the way through, even though I like that. I'm laughing because I can hear everybody's parents in the background shaking their hand and going, "It all sounds the same, that rock and roll, turn it down." To summarize, this album hits every mark for me. And again, it does consist of some of my favorite artists, so I'm not even just a tad bit biased. It's in my personal music hall of fame, and it's always top on the list when somebody asks me for music recommendations. I also love Broken Boy Soldier and Help Me Stranger, but Consolers of the Lonely just hits harder for me. From a mixture of nostalgia of listening to it over the past 10 years and the anniversary release in 2018, I can only hope that we don't have to wait another 10 years before we get new music from the Raconteurs. I was fortunate enough to see the Raconteurs live in their recent tour where they played an assortment of songs from all 3 albums. being one of the most interactive and fine-tuned concerts I've ever been to. I think it's safe to say I had an absolute blast. Listening to music digitally, then on vinyl records, to then live concerts. It's just a whole different ballgame. Singing along and clapping in a sea of fellow fans, only 20 feet away from some of your favorite artists, there's just nothing else like it, and you wish you could live in that moment forever. That's why I have such immense respect for the artists that can make these situations happen. And I hope it's something we can all experience again soon. Coming to a close, I hope you enjoyed me sharing my love for this album, and maybe struck your love for vinyl records along the way. I'm definitely on the newer side of the record collecting resurgence. I've been collecting for a couple years, and I only have a few hundred records so far that you see behind me today. But it is not a mere fluke that this hobby is coming back. People new and old are rediscovering that joy of physical media in a day and age where every song ever written is digitally at your fingertips. Going to record stores and surfing through new and old records has become one of my favorite things to do. This, right here, is the closest thing we have to time travel. Each record is the band reaching out to you, trying to share their lessons and stories. All you have to do is drop the needle and listen. Thanks for watching, and if you've made it this far into the video, I genuinely appreciate your time. Anybody can come up with a few fancy words to describe their opinion on something, but it's the fun of sharing and discussing it that really matters. If you want to see more, I would really appreciate it if you like the video, subscribe, and share with a friend. Do you have your own record collection? Pick a record, talk about it, and tag me in it. I would love to hear about your favorites. If starting your own vinyl collection is an expensive hobby that you are now considering, I will leave you with this short excerpt from the Raconteurs. So enter this path, but heed these 4 words. You shall never return. Catch you on the flip.